The AFC North is expected to be one of the best divisions in football this year. And right now, my colleague Bryan Power and I are going to talk all things AFC North. We know it's only July 6th, but NFL season is right around the corner. So welcome on in to another edition of Gold Sheet TV. I want to just remind everybody that over at GoldSheet.com, all three of our football products are now one. Gold Sheet, confidential kickoff, and extra. One product, $149, early bird price until July 16th. But besides that, we're getting right into discussing football. And the number one storyline from the AFC North coming into this season was what happened on draft night. And no, it wasn't a major draft pick. It was Baltimore Ravens finally locking down Lamar Jackson to a long-term contract. Now, that's not the only thing that's going to be different with the Ravens this year. They hired Todd Monken to be their offensive coordinator. The Ravens' old offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, ran a very vanilla style of offense that relied so heavily on the run game. When you have a player like Jackson, that makes a ton of sense. But it was apparent that there was really no, or not a very complicated passing scheme to kind of highlight some of Lamar Jackson's other skill sets. Of course, you also have to worry about injuries with a player of Lamar's style, and also just history-wise, he has been getting hurt the last couple of seasons. But from a top to bottom of a roster perspective, this is certainly a good team. So, Bryan, let's kick it over to you to start. Talk to me. How do you feel about this Ravens team with Lamar under center, a new offense now heading into the season? Do you think that they're really primed to make another playoff push as they've done since Lamar's really been in the black and purple? Or is this division just really tough that maybe the Ravens are a team where, yeah, they're good, but how good are they really going to be?
Well, you really touched on something briefly there, Eric, that is paramount, and that is Lamar Jackson's health. Okay, I know there's a lot of debate about just how good he is. Well, let me tell you how good he is record-wise as a starter. Excluding games where he's gotten injured, Lamar Jackson has a 45-15 straight-up record as a starter. And 11 of those 15 losses were by one score. You look at last year when he's in there, the team starts 8-4. Not only were those 4 losses by only a combined 12 points, get this, I remember this as I was breaking down. In those 4 losses, they blew a 21-point lead, a 17-point lead, a 10-point lead, and a 9-point lead. So this was a very good football team over the first 12 games last year with a healthy Jackson. You mentioned the new offensive coordinator, Monken. There's 2 things he's got to prioritize, okay? One, a couple of years ago when Jackson was first inserted as the starter, the Ravens were known for getting off to really good starts. They scored a touchdown on 35% of their first quarter drives. That was number 1 in the NFL. Last 2 years, that number's way down, 11%. That's 4th worst. And Monken also, and red zone efficiency, Eric, is something that I feel is very volatile year to year, right? Like a team really struggles in the red zone. One year, we often see a boost the following year. And that's what the Ravens are hoping for, because last year, they were 3rd worst inside the red zone at scoring touchdowns. Each of the previous 3 years, they were 13th or higher, above 60%. You talk about the passing game. All right, Odell Beckham's in. Zay Flowers is in. So these are better receivers than Jackson has to work with. It remains to be seen what is left in the tank with Beckham. But I don't hate the Ravens as a bet to win this division at plus 220. I think it's a better bet than taking them over their win total. The only concern I have is they were 2-6 against teams with winning records last year, and they've got quite a few games this year against teams who have a win total of 8.5 or higher. Currently 12, to be exact. The key, again, is Jackson staying healthy. And just a little tidbit for everyone watching. Think twice about laying points with Baltimore, because Lamar Jackson, as a favorite of more than 3 points, just 1-11 against the number the last 2 seasons. So do I think the Ravens will win games? Yes. Do I think they are a lock to win the division? No. As long as Jackson stays healthy, though, they should be better than last year. I think that's my kind of final verdict there.
Yeah, of course, we know that Snoop Huntley, the Ravens' backup quarterback who came in, made the Pro Bowl last year, but was he actually a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback? Even on the
almost won a playoff game. Almost won a playoff game. Should have won a playoff game.
If it wasn't for that fumble, they were right on the doorstep of scoring against the Bengals. Then Sam Hubbard had that fumble return for a touchdown. But no, I completely agree with a lot of what you're saying. And so first things first, I'm a gigantic Lamar Jackson fan, not only of obviously his skill on the field, his off the field, he's just, a guy that you would want to look up to. But something that I've noticed a lot of, and the debates have always been, is whether or not, or not whether or not, but how good of a passer is he really? And when you kind of look at different like metric sites, Pro Football Focus, some others, you kind of get mixed results because you see a lot of fewer turnover-worthy plays than you'd expect. But when you go back and watch the tape, you see more missed throws than he's probably giving credit for on the stat sheet. So I'm not going to say I'm nervous because, again, Lamar's an MVP. Like, I have the utmost respect for Lamar Jackson, but I don't know if right now, 2023, we're talking years removed from that killer season with 2 years of injury behind him, with not as great of an offensive line as he's had. And yes, you could say the weapons are probably better. I mean, I'm completely out on Odell Beckham. Like, I can't believe he got that $15 million. His agent and his PR team need to go to the Hall of Fame before he goes anywhere. I'm sure a good signing, but I'm a little nervous. Like, at plus 220, I don't think that that's enough value for me to bet on the Ravens against, obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Browns, who we're going to touch on right after this, who I think are the best bet in this division, and a much improved Pittsburgh Steelers team. But Brian, any final thoughts on the not only on the Ravens offense, but on their defense? Because this was a team that initially was one of the worst pass defenses in the league. They finally averaged out, and they're one of the best run defenses in the league. But any just general overall concerns about this team, regardless of Jackson in the offense?
Well, the defense was the reason they were blowing those leads. Like, they just couldn't get stops in the fourth quarter last year. I actually wanted to touch on something you said because you referenced Jackson and the turnover-worthy plays. It just so happens, I was, scrolling on Twitter like I normally do. And there was somebody put this compilation together saying only it said only 2 of these were graded as turnover-worthy throws. It was Lamar Jackson tape. And it was 7 throws. And I swear to you, all 7 looked turnover-worthy to me. Like, I was watching, so it's interesting you mentioned that what the stats say and the kind of mixed messaging from the metrics. That, yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of plays that weren't graded as turnover worthy. That you just sit here, and say that looked turnover worthy to me. He's lucky that wasn't intercepted. So yeah, I mean, a running theme for the challengers to Cincinnati this year, the 3 teams that didn't win the division, it's all about the quarterback improvement and or health.
Yeah, that is a fantastic point. Fantastic point. Of course, obviously Lamar staying healthy and also improving in some of his downfield passing would be very beneficial to the Ravens and will give them a leg up in chasing the Bengals, who obviously now have a chokehold on the division for 2 years running now. But going on to the next team, the Cleveland Browns, right? I have the Cleveland Browns as having one of the best off seasons in football. I love their hiring of defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. I think that's going to add a better dynamic to that defense that was clearly underperforming in terms of the talent they had. With minimal draft picks, I like the players who they selected. I love the acquisition of Zadarius Smith, Elijah Moore, as well as the signings of Juan Thornhill and Davin Tomlinson. And then you have Deshaun Watson, whose improvement is the most critical part to this entire puzzle. Obviously, they gave him that crazy guarantee contract. You look at his numbers and the way he performed last year, and you would think that he's washed and that the Browns are screwed. But I don't think that's the case. 2 of the games that Watson played in, for starters, were 2 of the worst weather games in the last decade in the NFL. So nobody would have had success in that game against the Saints, and missing which other one of the opponents were. But the numbers looked horrible. They were horrible. The winds were howling at crazy speeds. But this guy hasn't played quarterback in the NFL in 2 years. Like, how do you expect him to not be a little bit rusty? But prior to that, he was better than Josh Allen. Remember, the Texans beat the Bills in that playoff game after they made a big comeback. He was an amazing college quarterback. Like, Deshaun Watson is a guy that, without the off-the-field nonsense, nobody would be shocked about him getting that crazy guaranteed contract there. So, long-winded way of saying, Brian, I know you're from Cleveland, though you're not a Cleveland Browns fan. And while we do know that the Browns are a cursed franchise, my question becomes, and maybe a little bit harder to quantify right this second, is this team now finally actually underrated, or are they still just going to be the same old Browns this year?
Well, all right. A few things to touch on. Yes, I am from Cleveland, and no one in this city, rest assured, was happier to see the Cavs win a world championship before the Browns. Like, when LeBron came back, I was like, please just let the Cavs win before the Browns. I mean, Browns fans are What a bunch Browns fans are, man. But the debates these people have. And you look at I'll talk about a cursed franchise. The options people debate with these teams: Brian Hoyer versus Johnny Manziel, Derek Anderson versus Brady Quinn. It's embarrassing, the things when I would go on Facebook like 10 years ago and see these horrible debates my friends are having. But they've got Deshaun Watson right now, okay? And you make a good point, Eric. You can't judge him on what we saw last year, okay? A 58.2 completion percentage. He very much looked like a guy who'd been out of football for basically 2 seasons, right? Because he, in fact, was out of football for 2 seasons. Now, I guess the big question is, just how much does he improve this year? That is hard to quantify. The Browns are all in on this season. This is the most expensive offense in the league by a wide margin. They have spent heavily, I believe by about $20 million over number 2. They've invested heavy dollars in this offense, so they have to perform. There's a lot of metrics that suggest that if the Browns just play the same as they did last year, they're going to have a better record. They had poor fumble luck last year. They had poor field goal luck. They were only 2-6 in one-score games. I think they should improve in all those areas. I agree about Schwartz. The defensive line is better this year. We kind of disagreed maybe on how much value there was on Baltimore to win this division. I agree that you probably want to sprinkle a little bit on Cleveland. I think if you're making a division, a futures bet in the North, it's either Baltimore or Cleveland to win this division, because odds makers are kind of telling you they're unsure about Cincinnati, plus price attached to them. And when you see a plus price favorite, only 15 of the last 49 have plus price division favorites have won the division. So I think, Cleveland, it's not a bad bet to take a flyer on them. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the value is certainly there, north of 4-1. And yeah, this also, I think, like the Ravens, should be a better team in 2023.
Yeah, even taking it a step further, and I made this. We had this conversation with Adam Trigger last year when we were discussing the AFC North, the AFC East. We went a step further in talking about who's going to win the AFC Championship. Of course, obviously these odds are dynamic, and as training camp and the season begins to happen, you're going to see movement like crazy. So, I like the Ravens in terms of making the playoffs this year, but it also wouldn't be a bad thing to kind of wait to see the first 2 weeks. They go 0-2. Now you're getting in at a better number. That's also a strategy to employ, because especially at some of these sports books, these recreational books, they're going to have crazy high hold percentages on a lot of these different futures markets. So you're probably not getting as good of a bet right now as you might think you're getting. In some cases, of course, you could be like if you got the Jets before the Rodgers news. But digression aside, looking at the winner of the AFC Championship, Chiefs is a favorite, Bills behind them, Bengals behind them, then the Ravens fourth there. Then you have Jets, Dolphins, Jaguars, Chargers, Browns, plus 2,200. And if you're telling me if any of those teams, besides the obvious, you have your top 3 who are the favorites, Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals for a reason. Looking at the other teams in the mix there, the most value that you're asking me right now on any team to win the AFC would be on the Cleveland Browns, plus 2,200. At 11-1 for the Dolphins or the Jets, maybe the Jets, but the Jaguars 12-1. I know that they're improved. I know people are expecting a huge step, but I am very bullish on Cleveland this year. I could be eating my words again. This is not the first time I've been bullish on Cleveland. When they had Jarvis, they made the signing for the trade for Odell. I thought that was the year they're finally going to get unlocked. Unfortunately, not the case. But right now, you're talking about a team with Kevin Stefanski, one of the best head coaches in football. Make no mistake about it. Deshaun Watson, potential to easily be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He's been it at that point. Now it's kind of regaining form. One of the best rushing offenses in the NFL, one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Yes, now, defense, which was the biggest problem, now has one of the better defensive lines in the NFL. Solid secondary. I love the Juan Thornhill signing. And a team that really couldn't stop the run whatsoever now has improved by adding Zadarius Smith, a huge rusher on the other side, Myles Garrett, and big Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle. This is a formidable team. This is just a good, well-constructed football team. Again, Jim Schwartz now added to the mix as well. I really like the odds for the Cleveland Browns this year, Brian. I'm not going to lie to you.
Wow. You've kind of taught, we were joking off air before we started. You kind of pushed me in a direction with base. You were the one. Everyone who follows me on Twitter knows my love of the Cincinnati Reds, and it was actually the last time I was on this show. You were the one who started pushing me in that direction. You're selling me a little bit on it. You asked, are the Browns actually underrated? I would say yes, in the sense that you don't have that enthusiasm anywhere close to that enthusiasm. Obviously, you mentioned the year they went out and got Beckham. And this is a team I just don't see how they could be worse than last year, right? Like, you have to start there. Like, there's just no, like, I feel like last year they faced a really tough slate of defenses. And something you mentioned Stefanski, something he needs to get back to doing or figure out is, when you talked about the run game, this was an incredibly successful offense with 2 tight ends on the field a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And last year, that wasn't really the case. And they need to kind of get back to that. I don't know. Oh, God, who's the guy that Harrison Bryant? Like, he wasn't he didn't. Right, yeah, he didn't do what they want. He wasn't kind of what they were looking for. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of get back to what had them be such a successful offense a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they added veteran tight end Jordan Akins, so hopefully that's in their plans to utilize another tight end set with Njoku, who is definitely more of a receiving style tight end. Mm-hmm. But enough on the Cleveland Browns. Let's head over to the other part of Ohio, where we have the rulers of the AFC North, the Cincinnati Bengals. Not much needs to be said about this team. I was very bearish on them last year. I thought that their run to the Super Bowl against the Rams was very serendipitous. It seemed like they got the right bounces at the right times, and the right calls went the right way when exactly when they needed to be. They made the right play at the right time. They started slow last year and then shut me the hell up. They put on another fantastic season. Joe Burrow in that offense undoubtedly tops in the NFL, just really fantastic. And defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, proven to be one of the best defensive coordinators in football, doing great things with a very talented bunch, don't get me wrong, but he did a great job maximizing that talent. But speaking of some of said talent, they lost a lot of their secondary. Defensive back Jesse Bates, defensive back Von Bell, and Eli Apple are no longer with the team. They went big and signed Orlando Brown from the Chiefs to now be their tackle of the future. And while Brown has had some great times in his NFL career, he's also dealt with some injuries and also some poor play in his tenure in Kansas City. So a very big ticket signing that I'm not in love with. Then you have the drafting of Myles Murphy, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle as a safety. So doing a lot of the first 3 picks they made all on the defensive side of the ball for obvious reasons. Like I mentioned, they did lose some key players and they needed to replenish some talent there, which makes some sense. But toss me, Brian, what are your thoughts on the Bengals? Are they just a perennial AFC playoff picture team now, and they're going obviously perennial as in this Joe Burrow window where you have Joe Burrow under center healthy? They're going to be in the mix to not only win the playoffs, win the AFC North or the AFC Conference every year? Or is this now a year where you could see this team taking a step back because of some of the losses they are having to deal with now on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, it's an ideal time for Cincinnati because so many of these key players on offense are on team-friendly deals, right? We always know that that's when you have to capitalize before all of a sudden, the players come calling you got to pay them, not on their rookie deals. But look, I'm with you. Tip your cap to Cincinnati. They're 21-5-1 against the number, their last 27 games overall. That's incredible. But I think that they were not just lucky 2 years ago. I thought they were still pretty lucky last year. It kind of sounds like you and I had the same read where I was waiting for them to sort of fall off down the stretch, and it never really happened. They had a lot of close wins down the stretch in the regular season, and this was a really interesting tidbit, Eric. The Bengals only led at the half in 8 games last season in the regular season. And I think in the playoffs, they trailed the half in 2 or 3 games. We mentioned that Baltimore game earlier. I think they were down at the half to the Tyler Huntley Ravens. They had that incredible performance against the Bills, who were ill-prepared for the snow. Give the Bengals credit for that. Mm-hmm. But then they were down at the half to the Chiefs. So this wasn't a dominant team. I remember I had a play against on Tampa Bay against Cincinnati. The Bengals were a short road favorite, and the Bucs got off to an incredible start. And then Tom Brady turned it over on 5 straight plays, just handed the Bengals the game. And there was something similar, I think, against the Patriots the week after that. So I'm not actually convinced that the Bengals are the number 2 team in the AFC. I still think the Bills are better, despite what happened in the playoffs. I mentioned, already, kind of like Baltimore to be better. I like Cleveland to be better. I don't like Cincinnati to be better this year. I think we may see some regression due to the losses that you mentioned in the personnel, just due to some of the things we've seen, some of the metrics. I would not bet them to win the division, would not bet them to go over the win total. Keep in mind, you just talk about the AFC North. I think we've certainly hit on it. People can pick up very tough division. Every team was 3-3 in division games last year. So it's not like, I would be shocked if someone swept their division games this year in the AFC North, just shocked. So, yeah, I think the Bengals probably aren't going to have Lady Luck on their shoulder in the second half so much this year, and they probably do not go over that win total. As a matter of fact, I kind of lean pretty heavily to the under on 11.5 wins.
Yeah, I lean very heavily to the under as well for the win total. I'm looking at 11.5 at DraftKings right now, -130. Sure, there are better numbers out there, so make sure you shop around. But win totals in general, I saw an interesting conversation about this on Twitter as well. Unless you have an elite quarterback, and of course Joe Burrow is in that category, getting consistently to 10+ wins in the National Football League is hard as hell, right? And now you're asking a team with that's going to be relying on probably at least 2 rookies or 3 rookies to improve and be contributors to this defense, and trying to replace a Jesse Bates and a Von Bell who formed one of the better safety tandems in all of football. And then again, you add Orlando Brown to this offensive line, which was a lot better all year last year, and even toward the end of last year when they dealt with injuries, still proved that they were tough and a good group. So adding Brown should only be able to help. But I'm not sure that he is that stalwart tackle. The way that the Chiefs went about it and let Brown walk to then sign Taylor from the Jaguars, I think was a chess move by Brett Veach, the Chiefs GM. That was a fantastic move. So I think that the way that they let Brown walk the Chiefs is more telling about how Brown might not be near the top of his skill set and where he was at one point in his career. So I'm with you. Like, you're telling me to bet +550 on right now on the Bengals to win the conference, or +150 for them to win the division. There's just no value there. You're so much better off hoping, like similarly to last year, where the Bengals come off to a 1-3, 1-4, 2-5 start, and then if you really like their outlook, diving in at that point.
Yeah, and the offensive line was better last year than it was 2 years ago, but I still wouldn't call it good, this offensive line. And you talk about the signing. I don't think that's a needle mover for me either, Brown. So, I'm not that high on the Cincinnati Bengals coming into 2023 relative to the other teams in this division.
I agree. I had felt the same way last year. Ended up with egg on my face at the end of the season. We'll see if we repeat that again. You know, I'm out here touting the Browns and talking crap about a team that has had success in back-to-back postseason runs. So we could easily see how this can blow up right now.
We'll destroy the tape if it doesn't work out. It's okay.
Gotta go back, evaluate, learn from it. And like we said, this is only July 6th. Obviously, unfortunately, there are going to be injuries in training camp. There could be some other under the radar free agency signings. Some rookies can pop off and do well. And not only just rookies, you have to also consider people drafted 1 or 2 years before. Teams are anticipating those players that are still on the roster to finally take steps forward. So a lot of conversation about improvements coming through free agency and the draft. Of course, they can certainly help. But don't forget about the last 2 years free agencies and draft classes as well, because the teams are counting on the development of some of those players to step into key roles, as I think the Bengals are as well. They drafted the safety in the first round last year. I can't forget his name. I know he went to Michigan, though, who I'm sure they're expecting now to also fill in, as they also drafted a couple more safeties and defensive backs this year. But digression aside, let's get to the last team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think we're going to be on different sides here. I am bullish on the Steelers. Bullish as in I'm going to say they're winning the division or making a push for the playoffs. Can't go that far. But in terms of just improvement, I think this is a much improved team. I love their draft picks. I am a big fan of some of the re-signings and signings they made, specifically guard Isaac Samolo. That offensive line was terrible. I love the Broderick Jones pick. I love the Joey Porter pick. The Allen Robinson trade, okay, not really a needle mover. I love the Cole Holcomb signing, a linebacker that's really going to fit their defense, and keeping Larry Ogunjobi in the middle. You could talk ad nauseum about Mike Tomlin. You see the stories everywhere of just how great of a leader he is, and you look at his record, doesn't have losing seasons. It's incredible the way he brings out the best of players. But this is a much more talented team than they had last year. Their offensive line last year was a disaster, and they just simply had bad players on it. Now they're hopefully getting 3 of these 5 players at least above average NFL starters. So talk to me, Brian. Obviously, don't need any declarations right now, but what are your thoughts on the Steelers? You think they have a better outlook this year, or are you thinking more of the same 500 team?
I'm thinking kind of the same. Like, I don't hate the Steelers. I'm sort of just confounded by them, because you look at what they've done in recent years. Okay, we all know about Mike Tomlin. Like, 16 straight not losing seasons in a row it is for him. He's obviously never had losing record as a head coach. And this shocked me. Over the last 3 seasons, the Steelers have the 3rd most wins in the AFC, behind only the Chiefs and the Bills. Obviously, when you don't have losing seasons, you're going to be up there, but you don't, because they've kind of been mediocre the last couple of years, you wouldn't have expected that out of Pittsburgh. And they're one of just 4 teams in the entire league to have posted a winning record each of the last 3 seasons. That's the good. Here's the bad. The last 2 seasons, they have a minus 93 point differential. That's 4th worst in the AFC. They've gone 18, 15, and 1 despite being outscored by 93 points. That's kind of hard to do, I think. Obviously it's a lot of luck in close games. You'll have that 2 years ago. They were really lucky in close games. And I was down on this team coming into last year. And they definitely exceeded my expectations. They were favored in only 4 games at the start of last season. So the market didn't really respect them. But as the season went along, I think they wound up being favored in 6 games total. Tomlin closes on a 7-2 run. Tip your cap. Give him credit. There are some areas where I think we will see improvement. Number one is the red zone. We talked about Baltimore's red zone inefficiency earlier. The Steelers only scored 2 touchdowns outside the red zone all of last year. That's incredible. Not only was it the fewest in the NFL, it was the 3rd fewest in any season going back to 2000. So you would expect to see more big plays. And I think where the Steelers, quote unquote, got me last year was Kenny Pickett. We didn't know what to expect, right? But the bar was pretty low because all he had to do was be better than the corpse of Ben Roethlisberger who was just like abysmal, right? I mean, he was just so horrible, so washed. Well, now Kenny Pickett has to be better than Kenny Pickett, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. We have to see, right? We talk about Jackson's got to stay healthy. Watson's got to, rediscover old form. Well, Kenny Pickett's got to improve. And I don't love Matt Canada, the offensive coordinator, truth be told. But,
agreed.
If you're looking for a player who might score, we're talking about different markets to attack. A player who may find the end zone, certainly more than he did last year because he didn't find it at all. But a guy, if you want to look for like touchdowns, got to go over a touchdown. Deontay Johnson had the most targets in the league last year without a touchdown. He had 886 yards receiving and not one single touchdown catch. That's very hard to do. So I would expect him to find the end zone more. That might be something to attack. You mentioned the offensive line, Eric. Despite not being particularly good, that they still had the same 5 starters for all 17 games, which most teams don't do. The Steelers actually were number 1 in injury luck last season. That is a concern I have. Now, some teams just have a habit of staying healthy. Some are always hurt, like the Niners. But, if the depth on the offensive line, if one of these guys that they're counting on to improve gets hurt, all of a sudden offensive line could be a real liability in Pittsburgh. And 100%. This is probably the best team I would say it is the best team that's projected for a last place finish in the league. And it's really hard for me to pick them to go over their win total, to make the playoffs. I don't like them to win the division. Like I said, I think Baltimore and Cleveland are better bets in that regard. So you mentioned it's only early July. Call me confounded about the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think there's a lot of signs that point in both directions for this team heading into 2023.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you made some great points about the injury luck. Obviously, there's not much you can fully do to prevent some of those things. Football is a violent sport. Things are going to happen on the field. It's just not a matter of if there will be injuries. It's unfortunately when they will occur. So ideally, you do have people behind you who can step up and execute the game plan in the same way. Great point also about Deontay Johnson. Guy's an absolute animal. If you want to talk about contested catches, sure, make Kenny Pickett's life easier because Pickett just has to kind of throw up those 50-50 balls. Johnson can come down with them, and I would definitely not be shocked to see him reaching the end zone more often. But like you said, it's just a situation where I'm not running to any window at any price realistically right now to bet the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the playoffs, win the AFC North, or make a deep playoff push. But with that being said, if you get back to me around Thanksgiving and you tell me that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a game out of the AFC North, I'm not going to be shocked either by that, just considering, again, you can't underestimate Tomlin. Just his ability to lead men is incredible, and he does it every year. And the final point you made being that at least in definitely the AFC, are the Steelers the best team projected to finish in last place? You could probably make the argument for the for the Patriots as well, but I would make the argument for the Steelers being that team that is can easily be the odds-on underdog to win their division or make the playoffs from their division that actually ends up making the postseason.
And always great as a home dog, Tomlin. Always keep that in mind. When he's catching points at home, he's been money in the bank. I don't have the exact record in front of me, but it's quite remarkable.
It's certainly quite remarkable. So that's going to wrap up the AFC North preview. Of course, we're going to have more football content coming to you from GoldSheet TV as well as WagerTalk TV. Next preview, we're not sure exactly which division we'll do. Of course, we'll be taking down another one, the AFC. That'll be on Tuesday and Tuesday, Thursdays moving forward. Bryan, where can the audience find you, and what do you have going on for you over at WagerTalk?
Yep. WagerTalk.com is the place to be. Head on over to my page right now. We're on a red hot run in MLB. Obviously, MLB is the full focus right now in the middle of summer. 10-3, last 13 selections on the diamond. Number one at WagerTalk going back to last year's playoffs, up over 70 units during that time. Currently have a best bet up. We always have one or two plays up every day in Major League Baseball, and we're looking to keep rolling, man, right through the up until the All-Star break, and then in the second half. So check me out. Good times, man.
Definitely make sure to go over to WagerTalk and check out Bryan. Also on WagerTalk, you can check out the Gold Sheet if you want just the picks. We have picks every day for baseball as well as football futures coming at WagerTalk.com. And again, reminder for all the Gold Sheet subscribers, if you were had the football products last year, instead of having to decide which one you wanted, all three products are now one for actually a lower price. So until July 16th, $149 for the Gold Sheet kickoff, confidential kickoff, and Gold Sheet extra, one product, one price, early bird special, $149 until July 16th. On behalf of Gold Sheet and WagerTalk, we will see you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in, and we appreciate you.